What are the latest updates to the management and Salmonella SPP in raw poultry products, and what role has the enrichment quantitation approach as a method for chicken producers? My name is Iris Hofman, editor of Poultry World, and I'm going to discuss these topics with Rachael Trott, senior R&D Food Safety Specialist at Thermo Fisher. She has over 10 years of experience in the food and safety microbiology. Hello, Rachel. It's a pleasure to do this interview with you.
Hello, Iris.
Can you give me a quick summary on the latest updates from the USDA FSIS on the management of Salmonella and Salmonella species in poultry?
Yeah, so in the US over the last few years, there's been a real drive to reduce the amount of salmonella present in poultry products in response to significant public health concern and the amount of illnesses associated with these type of products. However, as of today, the regulatory framework proposed by the USDA is still in proposal stage after the first iteration received significant feedback from industry and consumers. The commenting period for this has now been extended to the 17th of January, and additional meetings have been organised by the USDA and FSIS so that they can get further guidance and feedback. Currently, the proposal encompasses many aspects, including the introduction of flock testing and an increased focus on in production monitoring. But one of the biggest changes is a move towards a risk informed approach, which requires both quantification of salmonella with set thresholds and detection of serotypes of the greatest public health concern, rather than purely just prevalence testing that we've seen in the past. But before any of this can be enforced, industry and regulators need to align on a strategy for how people are going to comply to the new rule.
Okay, so what does this mean to the industry producers, the poultry world at large?
So the largest impact is that move from qualitative testing to quantitative testing in finished products. It means that producers are going to have to think carefully about which methods they choose to do this and evolve the approach taken for that data generation in their facility and their response to the results that they get from it. The serotype detection on top of that will also mean that producers are armed with additional risk information, which will help with their usage decisions.
Exactly. And what methods are currently available to aid in this transition from qualitative testing to quantitative testing?
So, traditionally, quantitative testing of a specific organism requires a selective most probable number method. Anybody that's done one of these in the past will confirm that it is labor intensive and it takes days to get results. More recently, though, PCR based methods have been developed that require far less sample handling and they achieve quantitative results within a single day.
Okay, so that sounds good. What are the main difference in PCR-based quantitation methods?
So, quantifying really low levels of salmonella in a short time period, in, for example, a 30 ml rinse sample, is a significant challenge. Most commercially available PCR kits start detecting salmonella around the 1,000 to 10,000 CFU per mil mark. The proposal is suggesting a threshold of 10 CFU per mil, which is obviously much below this. This is why normally enrichment is involved in detection, so that you're amplifying your salmonella from 1 CFU per mil per sample to around 4 or 5 logs to get to that detection level. With quantification, however, we want to know what was there before enrichment, not what we ended up with. So, how do we get there? There are two approaches that commercial kit manufacturers have taken. One of them is where you take your total sample and you concentrate the salmonella by essentially removing the liquid and then resuspending the bacteria or DNA in a much smaller volume. The other approach applies an enrichment period in order to amplify the bacteria, but your PCR result at the end is taken and a back calculation is applied to predict the amount of salmonella that was there before the start of enrichment, using the way that we know salmonella will grow in that short time period.
Exactly. So both approaches to rapid quantification have their merits and limitations.
Yeah, so if we stick with the enrichment based method for now, using a result at the end of enrichment to predict what you had at the start is going to be exactly that, a prediction, much like the gold standard MPN method is. The predictive model used to back calculate that starting value has to be built with each sample type in mind because many things can influence Salmonella growth. You have things like antimicrobial treatments, the level of background flora, but by the end of production at that final product level, most of those things tend to even out, and predictive models can be built with a good level of accuracy. However, earlier on in the process, um, such as the rehang stage, those variables are much more pronounced. We refer to those as complex matrices. This type of sample, there is an increased chance that the generic predictive model is going to be less accurate because a reduction in the growth rate of Salmonella could be seen in some samples and not others.
Exactly. So most producers are looking at how to reduce the additional time and handling steps while remaining accurate and compliant. How does these methods compare in those industry terms then?
So, concentration based methods, on the other hand, don't suffer from the same variables because we're not relying on a prediction of Salmonella growth. The PCR result is indicative of the amount of Salmonella that's been successfully concentrated and taken through to PCR. However, when you concentrate Salmonella in a sample, you concentrate everything else in that sample as well. And that can include things that impact your PCR result. This means that you have to employ washing steps in order to eliminate that. Those methods also tend to have a higher limit of quantification, which means you're fine for the final product standard, but it means that you can't trend up until that threshold has been reached. The amount of handling steps introduced by those washing steps tends to far exceed what we see in an enrichment based method. For example, the market leading concentration based method has around 10 liquid handling steps and 11 other touch points. Sure Count, our Thermo Fisher Scientific's method, has just 5 steps to prepare including preparing the enrichment, and only 6 other touch points, which is about half as much. The time to result is slightly longer,
Mhm.
but with each touch point, the opportunity for error and cross contamination that can impact results is higher, which means you have a greater need for highly skilled analysts to ensure that your results are accurate. The number of hands on steps increases the time spent at the bench. So instead of walking away for 7 hours while something incubates, much of the time of a concentration based method is spent at the bench.
Well, exactly. So you mentioned accuracy of enrichment based methods being impacted for complex matrices. How is this handled?
So during the development of Sure Count, we quickly realized this limitation and discovered a one size fits all solution was never going to be appropriate for these sample types. So for in production rinses like rehangs or primary production samples, we established custom predictive models for each producer's samples. We found during testing with with a number of large poultry producers, we found that creating custom software based on naturally contaminated sample data from each supplier could increase our accuracy by over 10%. Equally, when comparing that naturally contaminated samples to artificially contaminated samples, we found that the doubling time of Salmonella could be up to 9 minutes faster when you introduced an artificial spike. And it just goes to show how important it is for these enrichment based methods like ours to build predictive models for complex matrices, in particular, using data points from real world samples.
And how does Thermo Fisher Scientific support the poultry industry?
So it's clear the poultry industry needs methods that enable rapid quantitative data generation and serotype level detection, which will allow them to continue to supply the market in the way that they need to. There are multiple approaches to rapid quantitation, and users need to decide which one is the right one for them. Because Thermo Fisher's SureTect range focuses on providing the most user friendly approach to PCR food pathogen testing, which minimizes the chance of error, reduces time at the bench. An enrichment based strategy for us was the one for us to choose. On top of that, we offer a comprehensive, easy to use solution for the poultry industry, covering every step of the workflow from media prep to sample handling and environmental monitoring. Our solutions are designed to deliver accurate results and maximize productivity, which helps customers meet regulatory requirements and, more importantly, ensures consumer safety.
Well, that sounds amazing. Thank you very much for your time and good luck with everything.